Well, it froze out back in February 2014. The man they call one of the bond market's most renowned investors. The former PIMCO manager, Bill Gross, leaving the firm. And now we're hearing, because it was rough right after he left, we're hearing that the word panic at PIMCO is reaching epic proportions. Charlie, is that overstating it, or are you serious?
I don't think so. We're getting this from people inside PIMCO. What they're worrying about is that the total return fund is going to hit a benchmark the total return fund does not want to hit, and that's for the first time, probably in about 15 or 20 years, go below $100 billion in assets, below that number, and that number, from what we understand, could happen in the coming weeks. Now, why is this a big thing? Well, we should point out there's the decline in the total return fund. It was above 180. I think it was more like $260 billion when Gross was running the show about a year ago, and it has gone down precipitously since then. Now, some of that is the performance of the fund. We should point out that the fund has not performed well against some of the benchmarks, but a lot of that also is because, quite frankly, the total return fund is people are fleeing, leaving, yanking their money out. Some of them are going to other funds. Some of them are going to Bill Gross's new fund at PIMCO. But clearly, there's panic setting in at PIMCO as the total return fund relinquishes. It's already relinquished its #1 spot to Vanguard as a top bond fund in terms of assets, and now it's going past that other benchmark, which is $100 billion. It's likely to fall below that. I'm hearing from people inside.
Where's the money going? I mean, it's not necessarily going to Janney, where Bill Gross went.
Well, some of it is. As you know, he's had these.
Right, but Gunlock, Jeffrey Gunlock.
It could go to Gunlock. It could go into stocks. We should point out stocks are generally up. If we showed a chart of the S&P versus the bond market recently, particularly now as we're going to have the Fed raising interest rates, bonds have underperformed. So clearly that's what's going on. It's a combination of factors. Performance. The bond market being a less likable place to put your money, but clearly the Bill Gross effect is hitting. And when we say, why is this a big problem for PIMCO? Well, they're losing tens of millions of dollars in fees. They get paid a percentage based on assets. When your assets go down, that percentage gets smaller, less money going to the bottom line. I mean, if you think about it, these things are usually paid in terms of basis points, right? 0.1% is a basis point. They usually get 40 basis points, on portfolios like this. And if the portfolio 40 basis points on $250 billion versus $100 billion or less is a lot of money.
I think you make a great point. It may not be a cult of personality thing where people fled the fund. With bond yields at 2.25% for the 10-year, that's not a lot when you have other big names out there, master limited partnerships, dividends of 5, 6, 7%.
We should point out, though, I think, based on our calculations, the total return fund has actually performed worse than a typical bond index that we post against. But listen, there's a lot of things going on here. The cult of personality does hit and does come into play here. But the bottom line is they're worried inside PIMCO. You should remember, this was the biggest bond fund ever. It's gone from way up here to way down here, and it seems like the assets leaving and the decline in assets is being unabated. It's going to fall below $100 billion, and when that does happen, that's going to be a huge story. I mean, that's big news in the world of investing.
And something tells me you'll get it first.
Well, we'll track it, but I mean, everybody knows it. The real story is that they think internally it's about to happen, and they're worried about it and trying to take steps to abate it.
Tough to stay on top for all that time.
We should point out PIMCO had no comment on this. We ran this all by them.
At least you called, as you do. You pick up the phone. Imagine that.
Well, no, I have an assistant who does that. But we still try.
Charlie Gasparino.
Okay.